Before 2000, nearly every medical student went straight through to medical school, but today only 1 in 4 do. So what changed? Well, med school got really damn competitive. I've seen thousands of pre-meds who couldn't do it, who made too many mistakes, but it's possible. I did it. I graduated from UCLA and stayed at UCLA Medicine. And over the last 7 years, I've helped thousands of pre-meds, many also with no gap years, get into their dream schools. And this is exactly how we do it. So we're gonna start with my actual 4-year plan. You can see here that it's very bare bones. There's no colors, there's no formulas, there's no bolds, no bells and whistles. It's just what quarters I have at UCLA, what classes could possibly fit. You'll notice that not everything is perfect. I have maybe the MCAT in the summer. I have a blank summer in junior year. I have some of these fun courses that I still haven't figured out and these electives that I still haven't figured out. And I'm gonna be honest with you, this was my first attempt, and many of these classes I never took. I never took Sociology 1. I never took Psych 10. I don't even know what this class is. It sounded interesting maybe as a freshman, but I don't know if I ever took it. And you'll see over time, over revisions, the 4-year plans got a little bit more specific. They got a little bit more nuanced. Here you have some highlights that look at the things that maybe I can slot in. You look at the GE requirements that are required for me to graduate UCLA. There's some upper division coursework that's mandatory that I needed to figure out. And then I wanted to graduate with honors, so I had to figure out what courses could give me honors credit. But here, I want to show you again, not everything's figured out. In the winter of my sophomore year, I'm not sure what writing GE I want to take. I don't know what this class is, and there's still electives that I still haven't figured out. Looks like the senior year I have a whole empty slot course here because, I don't know, maybe if I finished all my units. The point I want to make when you're looking at this 4-year plan is that plans are built and they're developed over time. They are not prepackaged. There's no one size fit all. What you come into college thinking you're gonna do is 100% not going to be what it ends up being. That doesn't mean that you should not make a plan. It means that you should get started immediately. Do your best guess, and then as you learn a little bit more about plans, you're gonna adjust them over time, and they'll get closer and closer to what you actually need to get done. And you'll see that as we've gotten more sophisticated and made these 4-year plans for hundreds, if not thousands of pre-meds, now we have this full system that has the major requirements and the courses and the med school timeline and what extracurriculars and when you're gonna do them. It really is a comprehensive system now, but again, even if you use this template that we have, even if you watch this entire video, the most important thing is to just get something on paper, name it sheet 1, put some classes on it, bold maybe the quarters, and that's it. Maybe write your name on it so you can find it later, but that is it. You don't need all these bells and whistles to start, but these templates help you remember that this is all that you're going to eventually have to fill out. And 2 more side points that I want to make that are very important. One is that never forget these summer quarters or semesters. A ton of pre-meds just focus on the school year, the fall and the winter and the spring. But the summer is where a lot of people get ahead, especially if you're planning on not taking a gap year. It is very difficult to ignore your summers. So take that as an opportunity. You're gonna have to work really hard. You're trying to get into medical school in 2.5 years, basically. And so you're going to take advantage of those 3 months of the year. It'd be like if you threw away 25% of your studying capacity, or you're trying to lift weights with 25% of your body mass gone. Like, you need that extra 25% to fill up. The next thing I want to tell you is that college has a ton of buffer room in place on purpose. Most people don't know that they want to go into pre-med, no gap year, straight through, right from day one, but you do, and that has a lot of benefit. Point number 1 is most people, maybe they start as a math major and they realize they don't like math and they want to go and do some humanities. Or maybe you start with biochemistry like I did and realize that biochemistry is too physical sciencey. I want something more life sciencey, and switch to something like neuroscience, which is what I did. That exploration process happens for the majority of college students. And so college curricula, their upper division courses, their GE requirements are much more lax. If you know exactly what you want to do and your goal is to get into medical school with a no gap year, the courses that you need to take are much fewer than you think. And most people, especially if they're efficient with their course planning, can knock out multiple GEs and upper division classes and honors requirements all in one. You can graduate in 2 years and 2 quarters. You can graduate in 3 years with honors. So take advantage of that fact. Buffer is designed in college curricula to support the majority of college students, but you're going for something that is extraordinary, a no gap year timeline. And so being efficient, being focused will be to your advantage. In case in point, you can look here. I barely have any classes in my senior year. There's one stats class and one ecology class. The rest is just research, maybe 1 or 2 electives for a whole year. You could certainly fit that in the summer in junior year. You could fit that in the summer of sophomore year. You can try and take a little bit extra coursework during the fall and winter of your junior year. You could have graduated early. I didn't decide to do that because I didn't feel the need to, but take a look at how efficient you can be. So this is our 4-year plan template. It is comprehensive and has everything you need to excel on a no gap year, 1 gap year, or 2 gap year timeline. It's available in our link in description box below now. Tens of thousands of premeds have used it to their success, so feel free to enjoy it yourself. And as a friendly reminder, you can work backward from any medical school application that you like. And we have 8 full AMCAS applications that have gone into some of the best medical schools in the country. You can review them just as we are today, showing you exactly when they got their extracurriculars, when they got their letters of recommendations on 0 gap year, 1 gap year, or 2 gap year timelines. If you're interested in getting into some of the best programs in the country, there is no better resource than looking at real applications. Click the application database link in our description box below now to join 18,500 premeds who are part of our community. All right, so now that we have this template, now that you have a sense of the 4-year kind of scope of things, let's go ahead and build out your actual 4-year plan. All right, so the goal is pretty clear here, right? It's to get into medical school. And in order to get into medical school on a no gap year timeline specifically, we have to figure out what this timeline is. And thankfully, it's quite simple. Doesn't mean that it's easy to do, but it is quite simple. So let's say we have our freshman year here, we have our sophomore year here, our junior year here, and then our senior year here, and then we ultimately have our first year of medical school. So I'm just gonna do first year MD. And then we have quarters, right? We have fall, we have the winter, we have the spring, and then we have the summer. Excuse my drawing. We're going back to the drawing board days, okay? What are the easiest milestones to note on your college journey? Well, freshman year fall is probably when you start, and then senior year spring is probably when you graduate. So we'll put graduate here. Woohoo, congratulations. If you are going for a no gap year timeline, what does that actually mean? That means that you start medical school right after you graduate. So if you graduate, let's say June of your senior year, what month are you gonna start medical school? Well, that's actually August of that same year. It's really only 2 or 3 months after you graduate, you start medical school. So we're gonna go put that here, start MD school. So about August or so, right? And actually, just to clean this up, we don't even need this first year MD because that's year after. So you'll notice that you'll graduate and then you'll start 1 or 2 months right after. That's the definition of a no gap year timeline. So people want to just continue their training all the way straight through. If your goal is to start medical school in August of your senior year after you graduate, what needs to happen right before that? We're going to start with the end in mind. So before you start medical school, you must get accepted to medical school. And when do those happen? Well, acceptances are really sent out anywhere between kind of November, October of the previous year to March. So why don't we go ahead and put that in red here. We'll go acceptances will be, let's say, fall to spring. And in order to be accepted to medical school, what's immediately prior to that? Well, those are the interviews. And when do those happen? Those happen about the same time, maybe just a bit shy or just a bit before then. So we'll go here, boom, all the way through the winter, and we'll call those interviews. So now we're really getting into the application cycle process, right? And what is immediately before the interviews? Well, you have to submit your secondary applications. And secondary applications, will come out in, August all the way through to the end of the cycle, but you really want to be finishing that August to the end of the previous year. So August, we'll say, is sometime around the summer, August, into the fall and winter. We'll just name those secondaries. And before you submit your secondaries, you must submit your primary application. And when is the primary application due? In these coming years, they open around sometime in May. Right? So that's actually the spring of the year prior. And so that we'll put in junior year here. We'll go primary application submitted sometime kind of in May and June. The earlier, the better. These are the details that separate premeds who get into medical school versus those who don't. And if you're applying to medical school in the coming year or two, you don't want to make any mistakes, especially a no gap year timeline. To do all that work for 2.5 years and then blow it on the final 10-yard line for your personal statement assignments or your working activities, it's not what you want. Our Pre-Med Catalyst students have a 100% acceptance rate if they submit their applications on time. That's only possible because we work so closely with them. In fact, we can only take 4 students per month until we're full for the cycle. If you're interested in working with us on your application, click the application cycle advising link down below to book a free strategy call before we're full for the cycle. So I want you to take a look at this. In order to start medical school, you have to go through all these processes: interview, secondary, primary, and that primary application starts the year prior. We're submitting in May, let's say 2025. In May 2025, we're starting our application process, only to get into medical school and start in August of 2026. That application process is longer than an entire year. And so now you're starting to understand why a no gap year timeline is getting harder and harder, because people are realizing, hey, if I want to start after my senior year, I got to be ready to apply during my junior year, a year and a half earlier. Now, the primary application. In order to submit a primary application, you can't just write your name on it, submit your grades, and then voila, you're getting into medical school. Getting into medical school is very difficult in modern admissions. Even more difficult if you're trying to do it on a tight timeline. So the question becomes, what is on your primary application? And when do we need to accomplish those things on the primary application? So why don't we just take a deep dive into what is on the primary application first. Add a new page here to talk about the primary application. The application has really only 6 components. Number 1 is your GPA. Number 2 is your MCAT. Number 3 are your extracurriculars. Number 4 are your letters of recommendation. Number 5 is your school list. And then number 6 are the actual writing plus the interviews, by writing of your personal statement, the writing of your working activities, and then down the line, your secondaries and interviews. So let's take a look at the things that you need to do in advance. Obviously, you need to take care of your GPA in advance, and specifically kind of adjacent to that is you want to finish most of your prerequisite courses. The MCAT, certainly you'll want to do in advance. And I am going to tell you a very strong recommendation. My recommendation is for everyone watching this video who's serious about taking a no gap year timeline is to please finish the MCAT before you start writing your primary application. I say this because we work with hundreds of students every single year, and the population of students who are trying to do their MCAT and the primary application at the same time, we have found that statistically their acceptance rate is much worse. And it makes sense because I'm trying to write my personal statement, but I also got to study 8 hours for my MCAT. And then I'm stressed about my working activities and the 30 secondaries I have to write, but my CAR score is not going so well. Juggling both of those is near impossible. We've seen maybe 1 in 6 do okay, but even those pre-meds, I believe, could have gone into a much better school with much better financial aid and merit scholarships if they weren't juggling both the MCAT and the application cycle at the same time. And now, because you're watching this video, you have the chance to schedule your MCAT at an appropriate time so that that's done, all out of the way. You can just focus on the primary application. So that's my soapbox. We're going to get back to that in a bit. Extracurriculars, you'll need to hit your clinical experiences. You want to hit your non-clinical experiences. You want to hit your community service or volunteering. You certainly want to hit some of your shadowing. You want to hit some of your research, things of that sort. Go all into that bucket. The letters of recommendation. Traditionally, we had the 2 science and then 1 non-science, but really most modern medical school admissions are looking at 3 strong letters overall. Your school list is something that you can really just do at the time of applying, so don't really worry about that. And then the writing and interviews obviously happens at the time of application, so you don't really need to do those in advance. So let's delve a little bit deeper into GPA and MCAT, just because the 2 of those are pretty in alignment with each other. Most of your prereqs will be courses on the MCAT. So the MCAT is broken down into 4 sections. So we got Chem Phys, we got CARS, we got Biochem, and then we have Psych Soc. So if you're going to do well in the MCAT, certainly you'll want to have a foundation in these courses before you take the MCAT. And so before we schedule the MCAT, these are the courses that I recommend people taking. Gen Chem, which at UCLA was Chem 14A and B, and then OChem, which is C and D. Then you have Physics, which was Physics 6A, B, C. It may be 5 or 1 series now. It's changed since. And that should cover your chemistry and physics. Notice that I did not put Chem 14BL or Chem 14CL, the lab versions of these courses. That's because those really aren't that relevant for the MCAT. You need them to graduate, but you don't need them for the MCAT. And remember, we're on a tight timeline. We're trying to be as efficient as possible. So if there's a way for you to separate the course from the lab, that'll be to your advantage. Of course, if you take a humanities course in college, it's not really going to be related to CARS. So So you don't really have any coursework to do for that. For biochem, we have LS 7A, B, and C. And then biochem is biochem 153A. Again, notice no labs, right? I didn't say LS 23L. I didn't say biochem 153AL. No labs are necessary for the MCAT. So you can push them back. In fact, if you take a look at my four-year plan, you'll see that I really tried to separate these. You'll see that stats was not on the MCAT, so I pushed it all the way to the end. LS1 was ecology, which is not really on the MCAT, so I pushed it all the way back. Chem 14CL, I tried to push back. Biochem 153L, I tried to push back. If I were to do this again, I would push back LS 23L. I don't think we could separate it, but the point I'm trying to make is try to be as efficient as possible with your scheduling. And then we have Psych Soc, which at UCLA was Psych 10, and then Sociology 1. I will say that these are optional. I actually do not think that Psych 10 and Sociology 1 will help significantly with the performance on your MCAT. So if we don't need to take a class, or if we take a class and it's marginal benefit for your MCAT, I personally wouldn't recommend it. So just because in the name, we're trying to be as efficient with our planning as possible. I'm actually going to move these over to kind of this pink area, whereas like the X or the avoid or the kind of question mark maybe courses, those are Chem 14BL, lab, you don't need, right? CL, you don't need. LS 23L, that's a life sciences lab, you don't need. Biochem 153L, you don't need stats, right? You can learn stats. And then you don't need psych, you don't need sociology. So if you didn't watch this video and you felt like, oh, psych soc, I should probably put psych soc in my schedule. I mean, I thought that as a freshman too, until I learned a little bit more about the MCAT. I learned what other people were doing at UCLA. I realized like these courses are not really that necessary. And then if you didn't watch the video, you would put all these labs together and try to put it on your four-year plan. Some schools will not let you separate them. They have to take the Gen Chem with the Gen Chem lab. Fine. But some schools, you can't separate them. And that is an efficiency hack. So if you are going to be efficient, you don't need the labs to graduate or to apply to medical school or to excel on the MCAT. You can all do that after your junior year when you submit your primary application there. So if we do our counting, we got, change to red here, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 courses that we should finish before we take the MCAT. So let's go back up to our timeline now. And we got to figure out when we want to take the MCAT. Certainly, as I've stressed earlier, we do want to take that exam prior to the submission of our primary. And so you might look and be like, oh, okay, all right, Mike, I'm trying to finish it before the primary application. Why don't I just take it here? Winter quarter junior year. And then I might ask you, that's a reasonable idea. Well, what else is going on in your life during winter quarter junior year? Well, you're probably taking 19 units. You're probably in your research lab in the evenings. You're probably on your club health site or health fair every Saturday or Sunday. Maybe you're like me, and Saturday morning, you have hospital volunteering shifts from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. Where in the world are you going to study for the MCAT? The MCAT is a monster, and it needs protected time, 40 hours a week for 8 to 12 weeks. A protected time to do well, because you want to take this seriously. If you do well on the MCAT, that opens a ton of doors for you. What I will say is that during the school year, trying to balance extracurriculars, schoolwork, and the MCAT is probably just as difficult and just as hard as balancing the primary application and the MCAT. So we don't want to mix and match. We want to respect the MCAT. And we want to give it the time that it deserves. So this is probably not the best time to do it. So you might go, all right, we'll just go one quarter back. The same thing, right? Fall quarter, probably taking classes, probably doing research. You're an upperclassman, big dog on campus now. Probably don't want to do it there too. Competing interests. And then you'll go, all right, I'm kind of getting a little nervous, but let's move one quarter back. Then we have this right here. Sophomore year summer. That should be an open space for you. You're not taking coursework. Maybe you're doing research in the summer if your PI needs you, maybe you're not. And your extracurriculars are certainly quieting down. It's the summer. People are going home and vacationing with their families and things like that. So that is an opportunity where you have that dedicated 8 to 12 weeks to go full time and really, really focus on the exam. I'm looking at this timeline. It sucks because, dude, you just finished 2 years of college. You just finished the SAT, and now you have to go and look the MCAT in the eyes and try to do well on it. Yes, this is a no gap year timeline. This is difficult to do, and it is unreasonable for you to think that you can have your cake and eat it too. If you want to be the 1 in 4 that go into medical school with no gap years, it's going to be hard. If you're going to take the MCAT during this summer, that's really kind of, let's say that you get out of school in June of sophomore year and you have July, August, and September to study, and maybe you take it early September, maybe take 2 or 3 weeks off of vacation, and you start school late September or mid-September, that would be the timeline. But if you're going to take it then, you have to have finished all 11 of those prereqs that we mentioned here. Just finish all 11 of them before you actually study for the exam. Remember, the goal is to optimize yourself, to do as best as you can on the MCAT, to give it the protected time, to take the prerequisites so that it's out of the way for your primary application. application so you can do the best you can on your primaries and your secondaries and your interviews. This is the optimal timeline, and it is insanely tight, but this is what needs to be done. So if we're gonna plot what we need to get done, we'll just start Chem 14A. We got Chem 14B, maybe we got Chem 14C. And then maybe in the summer, like I did, I studied abroad physics. I did physics 6A, B, C in one summer. And I know now you can only do 2 courses for the summer, but that's totally okay. You'll figure out where to slot the rest of it. Then maybe you do Chem 14D here. And then maybe you need to also take LS7A because you need to start the bio series. So, and then you do LS7B here, and then LS7C, and you need to take Biochem 153A. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And if you look at this, it seems fine because it's just 1 course a quarter, right? But then you got to throw your GEs on there. Then you got to throw whatever courses you need on there. But my stress to you is that above all else, these MCAT prerequisites have to come first. Use your first pass on them. Get them first because any other class won't be important until after you submit your application. These are the courses you must finish before the MCAT so that you're optimized, you're prepared, you're setting yourself up for success. If you need to throw on a GE that maybe you didn't like perfectly, that's fine, because you need to get these courses done with. And if you skip one, let's say one semester, you couldn't get LS7A. So where are you going to put 7A? Maybe you'll put 7A here now, and then you'll put 7B there. And then I guess you have to concurrently take 7C with the MCAT. Things just get tighter. So prioritize those classes. If you can't get them for whatever reason, maybe you have a low pass time, low priority, that's fine. We'll adjust and we'll adapt, but it is helpful to see a gold standard timeline so you know what you're striving for. That will take care of the timeline for the GPA and the MCAT. And then next, we'll have to talk about where to slot in your extracurriculars and letters of recommendation. Let's talk about extracurriculars. And the best way I think to do this is to look at a real application, look at my application, and see all the extracurriculars that I submitted and where in the timeline they live. When did I start them? When did I end them? Something like that. So that way you can get a sense of, okay, when do I need to start these extracurriculars? How long did they last? Where were the most meaningful ones? You can get a rough timeline on how to build a competitive application with a no gap year timeline from an extracurricular standpoint. And you can find this entire application on our application database. It's our link in the description box down below. Take a look at it when you get a chance. So from top to bottom, Robert S. Michaels Leadership and Service Award. This is just a service award that I won senior year for my work in the community. So that's really nothing. There's undergraduate research scholarship program, just some funding that I got during my junior year, also nothing. Here's our first extracurricular here. Peer learning facilitator, and then a life science supervisor. I'll let you read this, but essentially in this role, I was teaching molecular biology and I did that for a year or 2. And then I got promoted to lead the entire life sciences division. So I hired someone to help me teach cell biology and trained them up and was responsible for all of their classrooms. So you can see here, 5/2017 to 6/2019. I graduated in 6/2019. So that was essentially the end of my sophomore year, all the way through to the end of my senior year. You want to get a sense of where that lives? Let's just put it on the calendar here. We got PLF start, and then I leveled up really through my junior year, and then I ended when I graduated, PLF end. So that is a whole 2+ years and change. That was one of my core extracurriculars. It wasn't even one of my most meaningful ones, but one that I talked about very often during my interviews. Next, we have me as a youth basketball coach. I did this for 1 summer, and this was the same summer I took my MCAT. So you can kind of get a sense of what else I'm doing in the summer. Really, the answer is nothing or not much, because I, again, am trying to respect the amount of time that the MCAT requires. So I coach basketball. Orange for the orange basketball. Next is the health services research assistant at Cedars-Sinai. Did some research here and there. You can see over 2 years, it was really only 200 hours. So I was only putting in a couple of hours per week. It follows the exact same kind of timeline as the PLF. So I'll put it somewhere here, PLF short, and then PLF start or research start, and then research end. I'll just make those 2 yellow dots there. Next was my I am sports official. Again, 4/2017 to 6/2019, about 100 hours total. So I was working nights for 3 or 4 hours every week, just refereeing some intramural basketball games. And that, again, I graduated in 2019. 2016. So 2018 is junior year and 2017 is sophomore year. They're really kind of in the winter, spring. I'll put referee, so ref. And you can see as we have started this exercise, the majority of my extracurriculars are in my sophomore through senior year. Not doing a lot during my freshman year. I'm trying to really figure out how to take my classes, make sure that protects my grades. And what you don't see on my application are the maybe 10, 15 extracurriculars that I started, I thought would work well for me, but didn't end up panning out. Maybe they weren't really that involved that often, or I didn't really find a group that I meshed with, or I just became less interested over time. So it doesn't mean I was doing nothing freshman year. That's a key point. It means that what I was doing freshman year was exploring to find the right extracurriculars for me so that by the time sophomore year rolled around, I had the right places that I could invest 1-2 years into. Next, we have a health coach for a digital health platform. And again, you'll see February 2017, a really good place for me where I figured out kind of how to do well in school. And then I was looking at extracurriculars to really bolster my application. So this is a great extracurricular for me. Almost every medical school interview talked about this clinical experience for me. And this was my life where I was helping people lose weight. So my life starts, and then my life doesn't end until my graduation. I stayed there for at least 2 years. Started as a health coach and then became the director of health coaching. So there's that opportunity to level up over time. Next, basic science research undergrad. And this is one of the earlier experiences. I said that of all the extracurriculars, clinical experiences, volunteering, hobbies, research was one that I wanted to get involved with early because I knew that the more time you spend in research, especially if you find the right lab for you, the better it is. The more productive you are over time, the better you can get at the research, the longer you can know your PI and the people around you. So it was a priority for me. And you can see 1250 hours over about 3 years. 2016 is probably closer to like fall of my sophomore year. So I finished my first year, and one of my top goals getting right in out of that sophomore year was to find a research lab. So research start, and then research didn't really end again until I graduated. So the theme I'm hoping you guys see is that every single one of these research was about 2.5 years, or really 3 years, because all of sophomore year, all of junior year, all of senior year, right? So 3 years, and then my life was about 2.5 years. I hope the theme that you're seeing is that when I committed to something, it was going to be a 2.5, 3 year commitment. And even with the health services research experience here, where it was only 200 hours over 2.5 years, it's okay to put fewer hours. Important thing is to work through it longitudinally, get better and productive over time, and to really commit for an established period of time. These aren't like summer internships where you're going to Tanzania for 3 months and then coming back and having worked, 3,000 hours in 3 months. I'm not sure how that's possible, but I see these clinical global internships, and it's a very short period of time. And then after that, there's like really no connection to that community ever again, to that program ever again. So the things that I'm doing, what I want to stress to you is that the duration of time you're involved matters a ton. And the only thing you can do as a non-gap year student to increase that length of time is to start earlier. You need to figure out your MCAT early. You need to get your bearings underneath you, because then you'll have time to explore the extracurriculars, and then you'll have time to commit to the extracurriculars that are right for you. You won't find these right off the bat. So moving on, we got our basic science, then we have our mentorship program director, which I did very little for, 12/2016 to 6/2018. So I ended junior year, it was only 30 hours. I basically sent out a bunch of Google forms. I didn't do anything. Shadowing is a good one to figure out when I was doing that. So there was 1/12/2016 to 1/2017. That coincides with the winter break of my sophomore year. So I'll kind of put that here. We talked about summer breaks, but you also sometimes just got to use your winter breaks too. It's going to be tight if you're going to go for a no gap year timeline. And this is what it actually looks like. I tell you this not because it's for everyone, but I'm also telling you that it's not like the best and optimal way to get into medical school. Most people don't get into medical school with no gap years. But I'm telling you that if you want to do this, I'm setting expectations. This is what it's going to look like. It's going to be tight. It's going to be difficult. You're going to be working through your breaks. You're going to be working through your weekends, all to really get everything done in 2.5 years. So you can work backwards from real applications. And I'm showing you my journey, just like pieced together by these dates, by the extracurriculars, with this 4-year plan that we're creating together. You can really paint the story and understand like what it actually looks like day by day, week by week, quarter by quarter for someone who is trying to be competitive on a no gap year timeline. So we keep moving. I was the president of this club that basically did nothing. I started this in 5/2016, went all the way through graduation. 5/2016 again is my freshman year. And a lot of that is just like, there's a lot of clubs on campus that it sounds fancy to be leaders, but there's not a lot of infrastructure to really make a lot of impact. And even for the most well-meaning leaders, leaders, like I was very interested in the club and had a lot of success in other clubs, it can be difficult to figure out your impact and make things happen. That's all par for the course. I did a medical assistant thing from 2016 to 2017. So this is right when I'm starting college. This is the new year during my freshman year. So I went and chased medical assistant pretty early on, medical assistant start, and then I ended pretty early after that, just because it's a very toxic work environment. I felt like I was kind of getting yelled at more often than I was learning. I really liked the patient population, but it was difficult for me. So again, you can see starting that clinical experience early, starting that research early, starting those club involvements early. And you might see 2 of them stuck in freshman year, but I probably tried 10, 15, 20 different clubs that year. Next, we have content manager 11/2015 to 6/2016. So this was a really nice one. We'll just put it here, but this was called College Bound. And we were helping kids from the Boys and Girls Club get into college. I did that for about a year, made a lot of presentations, went to a lot of sites, and just helped people with personal statements and resumes and things like that. And then probably my biggest one here is the Vietnamese community health, where I started pretty much on my first month of college, and then I never stopped. And this is one of the clubs that it was very obvious was going to be a very good fit for me, just because I'm Vietnamese. I was considering being a doctor. I appreciate our community, and it's a core part of my identity. So I'm going to hit VCH start here and then VCH end. So you might have 1 or 2 of those where it's like a no-brainer. It's a great club. You're going to join from the get-go, and you're going to join and make lifelong friends for 4 years, and you're going to do great work in your community. But again, that's not going to be enough to get into medical school on a no-gap-year timeline, but it is great to start as soon as possible, especially once you get your feet underneath you with the grades. Our last one is probably my worst extracurricular of all time, is the hospital volunteering. That started in 2015, which is, now that I'm looking at it, incorrect, because I didn't even graduate high school yet. So this is a little typo on my end, but probably 2016 to 2017, I worked there for a year. I hated it. It was hospital volunteering, start right here, and then hospital volunteering. And another one of those just things that I thought that I should do for medical school, but ended up being like pretty useless. I never felt useful. I never felt like anyone cared that I was there. And so these are just lessons that I'm passing on to you. And you can see now from this 4-year plan and where the extracurriculars live, that this is like a rambling journey. Like if I could do it all over again and fully optimize it, I would just do VCH. I would just do College Bound. I would never do this MA. I would never do this hospital volunteering. I would never do brain sport. I would just do the research. I would do more of the refereeing. I love the refereeing. I wish I got more shifts and did that more often. I love the PLF stuff. I might have started 1 year earlier to see if I could really build out the division within UCLA, but that's not reality, right? And your reality, even if you've gotten to this point in the video and you're locked into a no gap year timeline, you want to learn how to do it, your reality will be exactly the same. You might join a club for people experiencing homelessness, and you want to give them like a mobile clinic, you want to connect them to care, et cetera, et cetera. And then you just might find that when you're doing it, you maybe just don't like it as much as you thought. Maybe you like just being more in a teaching mentorship role for youth sports or youth education, even though it's a great and well-needed part of society to support our people experiencing homelessness. It might just not be for you. That doesn't mean that you're a bad person or a bad pre-med. It just means you're exploring and trying to figure out where your specific impact is going to be and how you specifically are going to be competitive for medical school. So those are extracurriculars. And now we're going to do the same exercise for letters of recommendations. These are going to be much quicker. So the first recommendation I earned was my basic science lab. So my research year, right? It started in the fall of sophomore year and went for basically 3 years. I got a letter from my PI there. Then I had a humanities professor that at UCLA, we have a course that goes for an entire year. So I had her for the full year, freshman year, and she wrote my humanities letter. Epi Health Services came from my other research, which was, I don't think I wrote it here, but the one at Cedars-Sinai, that was also 2 years. University of Glasgow, that was another science letter where I spent the whole summer in physics abroad in Scotland. And so my professor there wrote me a letter. And then this is the same letter as that Cedars one. And then that basic science is the same one as that. So you can see like the majority of my letters of recommendation came from classes that I took for a whole year or was like full-time in the summer, or it came from my research, which I was involved with for 3 years, or my other kind of health services research, which I was involved with for 2.5 years. Long story short, the big takeaway is that extracurriculars are only strong, and one of the requirements to be strong is to do really good, impactful work. And that's only possible if you're in it for a decent amount of hours, a decent amount of time. And what I'm talking about is really 2-3 years. And you can imagine how difficult that is if you're trying to apply in a no gap year timeline and you have to apply after 2.5 years. You got to get started early. You got to make it a priority to figure it out. And you can't really move on to extracurriculars or letters of recommendations. It's like this series of dominoes that has to get right before you can go on to the next one. So take every milestone seriously, have a good foundation before you move on to the next one. And then you'll see that in 2.5 years, you'll have built yourself a pretty damn good application. Okay, so that's the no gap year timeline from the primary application, working all the way backwards from your white coat ceremony, which is the start of your medical school journey, going backwards to your interviews, secondaries, primaries, identifying what's on your primary, putting your required courses for your GPA and your MCAT onto your calendar, figuring out where in your extracurricular journey you're going to start slotting things. When are you going to look at the clinical experience? When are you going to look at the research? Using my application as an example, then we have the letters of recommendation and where those came from. That really gets you 95% of the way there. Now you have a real sense of how jam-packed every single day, every single weekend, every single year is going to be. I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm saying that to set expectations, because again, 1 in 4 can do it. And those 1 in 4 have some sort of timeline that looks like this. And once you know what it looks like, you can decide if you want to partake in the journey or not. If you decide this is what you want, then by all means go for it. If you decide that, dude, this is way too tight, I want to enjoy my pre-med years, I want to enjoy college, those are the golden years of my life, then take a gap year, take 2 gap years. The thing I want to stress above all else is that one decision to go 0 gap year or 1 gap year or 2 gap years or more does not make you better or worse than another pre-med. I hate this like stigmatization of either gap year people or non-gap year people. We are all fantastic in our own way. I will say that so many non-gap year students are so hyper focused on getting into medical school, and when they get into medical school, they don't have that much real life world experience. They can be a little bit immature compared to their colleagues. I certainly was in that camp. And what I don't like is when the non-gap year people make fun of the gap year, or the gap year people make fun of the non-gap year people for those qualities. I just want to remind everyone that, dude, we're all part of the same team and we're all trying to get through this very difficult journey together. So 1, it's not really helpful or necessary to clown on other people. But 2, remember what it takes to get into medical school with no gap year. Like, we're just looking at this, I'm getting overwhelmed imagining if me or our students have to do this or get to do this, it's going to be a lot of work. And so, yeah, there may not be a lot of time for social hour or understanding the nuances of social media and the modern economy. We all need to strive to be better, yes, but it's difficult to go through this. And I just want to respect everyone else's body of work. And this is going to bring us to our last and final section, which is part 3, a word of wisdom. What I want to say here is that there are 2 camps. There are novices and there are masters. And I want to say that novices can speed up. Novices can make this 4-year plan. They can put the GPA and the MCAT, the extracurriculars, the letters of recommendations. They can do the things. Of course, so can masters. So what are the differences between the novice premeds and the master premeds? The difference is that the novice can speed up, but the master knows when to speed up. I think the only thing that's worse than not having a plan is rushing through one that you made. Maybe something happens in your life and your family gets sick, or you couldn't really hit the ground running with your grades. To be rigid and stick to this no gap year plan, I've seen it happen thousands of times before, where people are slamming 1921 units to catch up from a poor quarter to try and fit all the classes in before their MCAT this summer, where they push back the MCAT into the fall, into the winter, into the primary application, which is a tale as old as time, and it's too overwhelming. It's too much of a workload. Even I, or people who successfully went through to medical school with no gap years, couldn't do that. That's just too much work. And part of getting into medical school with no gap year is the hard work, the talent, the planning that's required and discussed in this video. But a large part of it is also the privilege to be able to work for 2.5, 3 years straight without having to, I don't know, have a job to pay for college or have any other requirements on your time for family or friends or for maybe your own health issues. Part of it is privilege. It's not easy for someone who has other commitments to also do a no gap year timeline. You can see already how tight it is. There's almost no breathing room as is. So I want you all to be masters of the pre-med journey. And part of being a master is being flexible enough to understand when you need to pivot. My practice for all students is to plan on taking no gap year. Go for it. Go for the hard 19 units, put all the prereqs in order, start exploring your extracurriculars early, hold yourself to a standard of excellence and do it right from the get-go. Hold yourself to that standard. And then if you find that, hey, the 5 classes is too much, my GPA is taking a hit, or hey, I really don't want to be doing 5 classes, extracurriculars at night, research on the weekends. Personally, it's just too much for me and I don't want my journey to be so stressful early on because I'm in this for a 30, 40-year career and I don't want to burn out now. All of those are respectable conclusions that you get to. My default recommendation is, again, to start with a no gap year timeline and then make a mature decision on how you want to change things. The reason is there are too many pre-meds that ultimately wanted to take a no gap year. However, they are forced to take 1 or 2 or more gap years, or worse, they never get into medical school because their application was not competitive enough in the first place. And part of it is because they never bothered to learn to watch this video or to intentionally plan or strategize their 4-year plan to set them up for success. And so I never want you to be forced to take a gap year. I want you to decide whether or not a gap year is right for you. Start with 0 gap years, and then you have the flexibility to flex to 1, flex to 2. It's often much more difficult to start with, hey, I'm gonna take 2 gap years, that's my plan, and then flex back down to 0 gap years. It's just way too tight, and you've likely missed a couple of key milestones right off the rip. So that's medical school on a no gap year timeline. If you're interested in 1 or 2 gap year timelines, you can watch this video here. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Goodbye.